as an angel in disguise. Some of that is schools. It's like, no, the highest priority is our kids and what's impacting them. So the kind of school they're at, like, dude, nothing's more important outside of like parenting in the home, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I just posted, I don't know if you saw the gay ABCs. Have you seen this?
Oh, geez. No.
I have to show you this.
The gay BCs.
The gay BC. I photographed this in a store in LA. There's a new book section for children where they have non-binary books, gay BCs, and pronouns.
Wow. Man, I mean, that over the past few years as a man, my biggest, I would say, directive of growth is becoming more warrior-like. And becoming a father has evoked that, and then seeing what's going on in the world simultaneously, it's cultivated this knowing in me. I need to be more warrior-like, and part of that is obviously protecting my son, and seeing like a gay BCs or a pronoun book with, a beautiful cartoon on it that's trying to be passed off as, oh, this is good for your kid, but that's poison for their mind. And so I think like the warrior spirit inside of me, at least through my perspective, I see that. I'm like, ooh, protect.
Absolutely. And people get so mad at me because I still dress very fruity. I like to dress very flamboyant. I'm like a Leo at heart. And I love pink Speedos and showing off my muscles that I worked on for years and years.
I've got a pink Speedo as well.
Right? And then they get so mad at me. But this ain't an attack on the LGBT. This is more an attack on protect my children. Like, this is not the place. And I always bring up this, like, how would they feel if there's like a straight book, how to be straight, the straight ABCs, like it's ridiculous. It makes no sense. And
right. That would be bigoted bias, and that needs to be canceled if like
how to be a man children book. Like, it's crazy. And I'm an adult. There's a huge difference between me choosing to be in a Speedo and a child.
Yeah, it couldn't be a bigger difference. You are capable of protecting, preserving your own life, making your own decisions. Your brain is fully formed, as screwed up as our brains might be. But that children need caretakers. Like, that's why a 5-year-old isn't allowed to live on their own. It would be detrimental to their life. And then you have these, kids' books. Like, why does any level of sexuality need to be involved with learning the alphabet? Guess what? It doesn't. So I will see that for what it is. It's a predatory piece of content.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's in a kid. And also, I saw another post that you can now choose on the birth certificate in California. It says male, female, and binary.
Wow.
And I mean, to start off a young human like that is because there is some sort of society. They will, or even parents these days, there is some sort of incentive if you come out, or if you are like binary, there's some sort of reward, especially online, where you get praised and celebrated for your sexuality, which is just not who you are. You're more than your sexuality. You're more than, it's like me saying like I'm straight and everybody is cheering. It is ridiculous, and it gives you that false, like, everybody wants to be accepted, everybody wants to be a part of something. And if one sexuality group gets so celebrated, maybe you want to be a part of this because you feel lost as a teenager. I remember I felt lost. I don't know what to do with my life. And then there's this little group, and if I join it, I get celebrated online and I get followers. And the more and you're easily persuaded and manipulated as a young teenager or child. So it really... I even heard that you shouldn't even like tell children, like, every time they draw something, like, oh my God, this is like, you're a genius, this is amazing, like, because you give them this false sense of reality, And it's the same thing with the sexuality part. It's
Yeah,
just so odd as a child.
it's not just, in my opinion, not just odd. I think it's predatory, and I think the propaganda around the whole LGBTQ movement, it like you were saying, it baits kids in with these social rewards, because all kids, all adults as well, but the need is just more rampant in kids. All all kids have a need to belong and a need to feel significant. And hey, here's this group. If you declare yourself non-binary, if you're a little boy, but say you're a little girl, guess what? You get to not only belong, but you get these social status points that don't mean anything, but we're going to tell you they mean something. That gets to make you feel more significant. And this idea of people trying to get kids to identify with their sexuality, when we are so much more than our sexuality, like a physiological function. That's like, if I self-identified with my bowel movements, it sounds ridiculous because it is, but to reduce down the miraculousness of my own being to, I do bowel movements, please celebrate me. Or, oh, my sexuality functions this way, let me identify that, and please celebrate me based on this. That's not an achievement. It's not even a character trait. It's just more of a biological urge. I think that, amongst other things, I think it's very weakening to kids, because, when I was a kid, of course, world was still plenty screwed up. Like, yeah, celebrate it if you did something awesome. Like, whatever, your team wins, or you got the first place trophy, or you like literally tried your best at something, win or lose, you got celebrated for that. And that's, I think, a healthy way of enticing children to grow stronger. Cool, you get celebrated when you work hard, do things, try hard, rather than, oh, you exist in your non-binariness, so we'll celebrate you. So I think that's rewarding kids for achieving nothing, and it breeds a very weak population, in my opinion.
Very comfortable
Yeah.
population. And the only thing this works is if you don't have kids yourself. Because I feel like once you have kids yourself, your whole perspective, at least for me, on life changes. And like you said, you become like, things are not that funny anymore. It becomes a very, hey, I'm gonna protect you now. I need to protect somebody. I'm responsible for somebody. And I started to question everything. It really taught me, like, what do I feed my son? What do I let my son consume visually or in the media? Like, who do I let my son talk to? Like, how do I dress my son? Like, you need to make all these little decisions for him now.
Yeah.
And your whole perspective changes. Before you're like, yeah, like, maybe like many years ago I would think like a gender neutral restroom sounds kind of cool, like blah blah blah. But once I think you have a daughter or a son, you don't want that, because it becomes with danger, and things are not that funny anymore. And I think all these online things that go very towards this gender fluid, open spectrum kind of movement, or even these books, come from people that don't have children themselves.
Yeah.
Because then you don't learn this, and you don't feel that way, and you feel this need of me. It's all about me. I mean, this whole society is the most narcissistic thing.
Yeah,
the whole mental health thing, it's all about, listen to my problems. I'm not here to provide, protect, have a positive influence on my community. Listen to my depression, my trauma, my feelings. I want to address what I have to my problems at all costs. And I think that's really what's so wrong these days about everywhere I look online, at least.
Yeah, I mean, with what you said, if you let the culture, and I'll call it the degenerated culture, because there's good culture around as well, but if you let the degenerate cultural propaganda infiltrate you, you set out with this victim mentality and try to get your emotional needs met based on that. Oh, the more of a victim I am, the more significant I am. Maybe the more I get a sense of belonging, and I certainly get more attention being a victim. And guess what? If you're actively striving to be a victim, talking about how oppressed you are, here's my problems, then you're certainly not getting stronger, and you're probably actually training yourself to get weaker. And I mean, just like you, I had my son 3 years ago. Not like I had him. I'm not like they say men can get pregnant. I've tried. I must have not a very good womb. But when we had our son 3 years ago, my perspective changed massively as well. Just literally everything, because I think there's this beautiful instinct inside of us that hasn't been online because it hasn't needed to be online, but the father instinct comes out, the mother instinct comes out. Now you're seeing everything through this lens. Certainly protecting your children is one of the lens, like what is a threat against that, and then nurturing your children. So get them protected, but then nurturing. I want this little human to be loved and grow up strong. So what you just see threats everywhere. But before I had my son, I didn't see those threats. I'd hear like, oh, public schools, like it's not going to be the best education, but it's going to be like neutral. It won't do harm. You just might not get as good of an education as if you're at a Waldorf school or Montessori. But now it's like, oh, public schools, that's a threat. But I didn't see that before I had my father instinct lens come online.
Same. And also with COVID, you know, as bad as it was, it really made me like be like, yo, like this is insanity.
Yeah. I'm grateful for COVID.
Yeah, I'm grateful, very grateful, because it forced me to really question everything.
Yeah.
They overstepped so much that at this point I was like, you know what, if this vaccine is not very effective and creating a lot of harm, maybe other vaccines are doing the same. And then you look more and more into this rabbit hole and you find out that most things are designed to make profit rather than to help you. And yeah, I think being a father is the best thing that can happen to you, because in this moment it's not about you anymore.
Yeah.
If you want it or not, this will be taken from you. And before that, everything was about me.
Yeah.
You know?
Man, and it's weird because with or without kids, but let's just say before kids, we want to ultimately, all people want to be happy. Deep down, even if you have a victim mentality, you're only acting like a victim because you want to be happy. And you think this, oh, I'll be a victim to make me happy. You're trying to use a thing that inherently can't make you happy to be happy, but it's driven out of a desire to be a happy, purpose-filled, fulfilled human being. But you can't, so you're just trying to make everything about yourself because you want to be happy, but that doesn't work. You know, I've been able to learn a lot from Tony Robbins. I think the world of him as a human, his work, and something I've learned from him, one of the number one ingredients for being truly happy, not like dopamine hit gratification, but truly happy, truly fulfilled, you have to contribute to the betterment of other people. You can't be happy making it all about you. Yes, you got to fill your cup up, take care of your needs. You got to have some selfishness in there, but you have to have a real outward drive to be giving and contributing to other people. And of course, part of the miracle of parenthood is that's built in. Unless you're going to be a crappy parent, you're going to have to really learn and then live in this beautiful state of always giving, making it about someone or someone's else's rather than it's just about me. And I know before we had our son, that scared me. I'm like, that's going to make me unhappy. But I was like, no, it not only makes me happy, it makes me more than happy. It makes me fulfilled. It makes me feel purposeful. And I think feeling fulfilled and purposeful, those are trump cards over happiness. Even though happiness is important, it's like there's better things than just happiness. And you only get that when you're in a state of giving, contributing, and supporting other people and things outside of yourself.
This society tells you you need the Rolex, the Lamborghini, the following, the clout. And I used to chase all that in LA. And I used to think, man, I'm happy. You know, I get to drive these cars.
They tell me I'm happy. Okay, this is okay. I feel happy. Yeah. They told me.
It's a rental, but I'm happy, right? I'm driving this, you're not. So you have no understanding of, well, happy is such a shallow word anyways, but like of purpose
Yeah.
until you are a father, because I can sit with my son in the dirt and him looking at me or calling my name or wanting to show me a flower in the park is as the most meaningful thing in the world. You don't need anything else anymore. You can be in the shittiest couch in the shittiest apartment. If you have a child, this will be it. This will be like, God made me do this. This is my purpose. And this is why they want to take it from us.
Yeah.
The first step was separating the parents from the child
Yeah.
so they can make it obedient and get it in the whole slavery, so it can work and bend and not question authority at all times, because you just learn nonsense and you learn to, like, I used to always question, why am I learning this? Are you teaching me this? But you learn after some time, there's no questions to be asked.
Right.
So you just follow orders and you bow down for the system, and you continue that when you get out of school. That was step number one, but it looks like it's not enough. What they really trying now is to depopularize the world.
Yeah.
They tell everybody humans are bad, the footprint is too big, we're killing the climate, we can't live like this, and then they put all these products that suppress our hormones. They give us devices where you can watch porn in seconds without any sort of identification or age or anything that will hold you from that for free. So you don't have any need to go outside of your apartment or house anymore. And especially when you're a young man, you might get lost in this pornographic world, and your sex drive will be gone, and your procreation too. And then they tell you that children are expensive and they will destroy your career, and you need a career even if you're a woman, because being a stay-at-home mom is you lost in life. Because
isn't that's maybe the wildest lie ever.
And they got people to convinced the world that that's like a thing to look down upon, and a stay-at-home dad is beautiful, because then it's completely dysfunction, and the man won't be attracted to the woman anymore, because a woman won't be attracted to a stay-at-home dad, and a stay-at-home dad won't be attracted to a career woman that is really bringing home the money. And at this point, there's no attraction between each other, and there might be no kids. And at this point, day one.
Yeah, man, it is wild. And you know, there was something I was looking at. I think it's called stophavingkids.org. This whole movement trying to get people, like, stop having kids, obviously, but telling them it's actually unethical to have kids, because if you bring someone into this world, it's guaranteed suffering. Well, yeah, nobody's ever lived a life and not had suffering. But also, if you don't have kids, it's guaranteed no life. It's guaranteed no happiness, no joy. But it's just, they're trying to virtualize ending life. And a term I've heard for the first time in the past couple months came from Elon Musk, extinctionists. There's a lot of these globalist figures and people under them. How they function, they truly are extinctionists. What they're doing is wiping out the human race. And, you know, I couldn't tell you their actual motives. I would imagine one of their motives is a small population is easier to control. I would also imagine one of their motives is they truly hate themselves, so they project that into the world around them. They don't like themselves. They don't like their life. They hate themselves. They hate their life, so they hate all other life, and they're trying to end that. Probably because they weren't held enough as kids, but like this idea of trying to control. But man, like you said, like the happiness, the joy, the love, the fulfillment you get from a moment with your child, it trumps any Lamborghini, any social status. Like this morning, I was sitting on the toilet taking a crap. My little boy walks into the bathroom, looks me in the eyes, and just says, "Daddy." Oh, that's a win for the day. That is, you can't buy that experience. You can't buy the feelings and the beautiful connection that moment between a father and a son created. And we didn't need any material possessions. I mean, I could have even been crapping out in the woods. We didn't even need the toilet. It's just what's valuable in life, in my opinion, comes from people, person to person. It's not the material stuff or the identifying as non-binary or straight or whatever. It's just like, yeah, like, let's have equality, accept other people. Doesn't mean we have to celebrate every aspect of everybody.
That's why I think it's so funny when you ask me, do you like Texas? It's confusing because it's really not about where you are. It's really who you're with. And you can be on the most beautiful beach, but if you're there alone, there's something missing. It's kind of weird if you go travel by yourself. Like, it might be, you might find something, but there's beauty in bringing somebody. And even a child will always want to share whatever they have with you as a parent, and they always be like, hey, like, I need to show you this.
Yeah.
Because if I can share this with you, it will be so much more beautiful if I share something with you. And that's why the isolation and the not talking to each other is key for this movement.
Yeah.
The less we talk to each other, the more depressed, semi-depressed we're going to be at home. And that's why I think these podcasts are so beautiful, because it's like refound a way of conversation. And it's really found a way for me. My son was like a couple months old, and I used to like do the milk and like get the bottles, and there was like so much time on hand where I would just sit and do nothing, where I would just start listening to podcasts. And I found Joe Rogan and a bunch of others, and I would really be like, you feel like connected, even though you might not be doing the podcast yourself. Right. There's some sort of connection when you feel like you're not alone out there, and there's other people who feel like me. And there's not only the suppressors that put the fluoride in our water, there's also men out there that feel the same way as you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We're needy creatures, aren't we? We need connection, and I don't think anything will ever substitute for in-person connection. I think there's some kind of energy exchange, yet also there's a level of connection you certainly get through podcasts, hearing a couple people have a real conversation, and like, yeah, you feel connected. So like, awesome, like that is healthy for me. I feel a sense of connection just by having a podcast on. And then the other thing it does that I love, that is maybe against the ultimate agenda, it makes you think. You hear a couple people talking about stuff, now you're thinking, or maybe they're talking about the state of the world or what's going on with the vaccines, and now you're asking questions, now you're thinking. But if it's just like, hey, I'm watching Netflix or I'm scrolling Instagram, like, the level of thinking you're doing is way low, as well as the level of connection. Because like you don't, I've never felt that sense of that feeling of connection you might get with a podcast. Never got that with a Netflix show. It's like, I might be entertained, but I'm watching Yellowstone. I don't feel connected to Kevin Costner. I don't feel, he's literally acting. Like he's not even himself.
Not only that, there's certain things they will allow to be talked about, and there's a narrative, and there's all these movies. When the more awake you are, the more you see what they're trying to do, especially with the male and female, the family. You don't really, you see all these, I see all these movies on Netflix now where the dad stays at home and is like a little bitch on the driver's seat. The Barbie movie, I was shocked when I was watching the Barbie movie, because everybody was like, man, Candy Cane, this is your movie, right? I was like, it is my movie. I'm gonna go watch this, right? I was so excited, dressed all pink, sat in the chair. The first half an hour I was like, man, this is sick. I love the set. Everything was so fucking cool. Until Ken started being a bitch and crying about everything, and then she treating him like shit.
Yeah.
The whole movie, I'm like, what is this? What am I watching? And then this whole her like telling everybody that the man is what's wrong with the world, and they've always done this, and they've always made the laws and the rules, and they're what's awful with everything. It made me like, it's such a sour and petty narrative.
Dude, it's perverse, and I don't necessarily mean sexually perverse, because there's plenty of that in movies, but it's perverse in the sense that it's trying to engineer people to think and act completely backwards in a just dysfunctional way. What I mean by that is that agenda, the narrative, the societal narrative, it tries to get women to act like men and tries to get men to act like women. Feminism, it's, oh, ladies having the kids, being a mom, that is weak. What you need to do, see what men do? Get out there, get a job, earn a lot of money, have high status. So it's getting them to act like men. Be fucking tough. And then it tells men masculinity is toxic. Be a little bitch. I mean, they don't say it in that terms, but they get you to act
Be
like...
in touch with your feminine side.
Exactly. Process your emotions like a woman. Masculinity is toxic. But guess what? If you're getting women to act like men, getting men to act like women, you're getting people to go against their true nature. And I would dare say nature is a force that we're not going to overcome, no matter how much you try. You can try to swim against the current, good luck, or you can swim with the current. And if you do, you're probably going to have a much more harmonious life, letting yourself be yourself. But if you're a man conditioned to act like a woman, like, you're not being yourself. You can think you're being yourself because you've been conditioned to believe that who you are is who you think you are, but you're going against your nature. Men need to be strong again, and women need to allow themselves to act like women. And like, I'm not saying like all women need to be in the kitchen and homemakers. I'm saying a lot more would probably be happier. But if a woman's authentic desire is like, oh, I'm going to go out in the business world and get them, like, I can go for it. You go, girl. But just mindlessly sheep-like following this, I'm a woman, so I should act like a man, or I'm a man, I should act like a woman. Man, that is a weakening of society.
No, and anyone who has ever watched a woman become a mother or not become a mother, it's also very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've met women that go towards their 40s who have not have a kid yet. There is a genetic clock that you cannot deny, and you can feel it. As a man, you don't have that.
Yeah.
But women have that. They can pretend they don't, but there is some sort of genetic thing that it wants them to procreate and have children, and it becomes very desperate the closer you become to 40. And to see all these like Instagram models freezing their eggs and not becoming mothers it's just sad.
Yeah,
really, to me.
It is sad, and my sadness about it speculates that a large percentage of them are acting inauthentically. You know, if a woman authentically has this desire to not go with a genetic instinct, cool, all the power to you. But man, if we could do a deep psychological analysis of a lot of those women, I would guess a lot are actually betraying themselves while tricking themselves into believing that they're being true to themselves.
It's a trap.
Yeah.
It is a big trap. And yeah, it's just it makes me really sad, and I used to be a part of that, kind of. I always worked out, and I always I don't know, there's always things.
I didn't think you worked out.
There would always things be, even if I was so flamboyant, there would always be a balance to everything. I would still like to make fires, and I would still like to protect and provide, even though I do this fruity, crazy side. Like, it wouldn't really be, even this wouldn't really interfere with my masculinity, because I don't see it that way. Yeah. I never saw it that way. There's a difference between me putting on lipstick and high heels or me being in a pink Speedo. You know, if that would never match to me if I'm like trying to be like fragile, like just being on a high heel makes you like in a fragile position, or wearing a Speedo, which doesn't really make me fragile, in my opinion, when you have like a six pack. Yeah. So
the European men sport Speedos proudly. It's no big thing. But I was deep in the trap as well. And also I wonder, how am I still in the trap, but I just don't recognize it. But one way I can see how I fell into the trap of a man should actually act like a woman, I got into self-growth about 22 years ago, so relatively young age of 20, and it was great. But what I latched onto is like this vulnerability movement, like, oh, to be a real man, you should just be able to cry, be compassionate, listen, and guess what? Yes, those are great qualities of a man, to be able to dip into those psychological states when it's situationally appropriate. But my trouble is, and I see a lot of men do this, that was my only state. Like it was like basically going into the feminine state, but that's all I had. I didn't have the warrior. I didn't have the other qualities of a man, because I had trapped myself into thinking that's kind of, that's old, outdated, that's kind of, a little bit toxic, to be able to, assert boundaries, be bold and stand in your power. Like, no, that's like, that's not very healthy anymore. But I've realized, no, I was not a whole man. I was in this trap of thinking a man is something that it's not. And I was living that way. But that's why I've been on my mission of like evoking the warrior spirit in me, so that at times as a man, that's situationally appropriate to be like a warrior, to be fierce. And other times, like when you're holding your child, you probably don't want to be fierce. You want to be the tender lover. But I think a real whole man can access all the psychological states, not just this narrow spectrum that is a specialized feminine state, like society would try to get us to live in 24/7.
I think it's the only way, really. It's the yin and yang. It's kind of like what they trying to say with getting in touch with your feminine side, because the more masculine you are, when I go to jiu-jitsu, I come home and I'm very calm. I can be very loving to my family. I just beat up a man over and over, and I got beat up. So I don't have any need for violence or war. I don't have any need to scream at my child or discipline him or nothing. But if I sit on a couch or I wake up and I check my emails for hours and I edit on the computer and I make myself coffee and I don't eat breakfast, and I'm like, you get this, like, you feel your, I don't know, testosterone or something. You get broiled up. Even on Sundays when I do rest days, I feel a little off ease. I feel like easily tempted or easily irritated, where I like maybe would lose my temper and scream at my wife or at somebody, because it's much easier irritated than when I have some sort of outlet.
Right. Our real man energy can get misdirected if it doesn't have the outlet. And that outlet might be brothership, hanging out with other men, could be jujitsu, working out, standing for something fiercely. That's like healthy outlets. But if we don't have that, because that's kind of a toxic man, that energy, it's going to be misdirected somewhere. Sometimes it's just inward, and depression or anxiety, or our insides get boiled, or it's losing our temper in a way that's like, well, that's not appropriate right there. Jordan Peterson said something that I think is pretty profound, and it relates. The quote, I'll probably butcher it, but it was, a safe man isn't a man who's incapable of violence. A safe man is someone who is capable of violence, but he has himself under control. So I think having our directed outlets as a man to do man shit is very important. And obviously having self-control. Like, you don't do jujitsu with a neighbor because they parked their car in your driveway. You do that on the mat. Or if the time ever came where you needed to protect your family, you do it then.
And it's always the little nerdy bitch that shoots down a school.
Yeah.
It's never the guy with a six-pack or the well-dressed guy in a suit. I don't think anybody that, like, is successful in their love life, in their job, or if you need to have something lure and then put pharmaceuticals until you don't have any empathy, and then you're willing. And that's why man they are very dangerous, misguided, and with no purpose. There's nothing more dangerous in a society than man, but also man is what protects the society. My mom I always tell her I need to be a man, and I'm finding myself in Texas, and I'm It's all about making Can great again. It's my new thing.
That's great.
But she said, I don't need to be protected. I don't need a man. And that's like what they teach these days. And I said, well, who do you call when somebody robs your house? And then she said, well, nobody is robbing my house. And I say, well, maybe not now, but the border's open and we're in you don't know. Maybe you're right. It will never happen. Nobody's ever in Austria maybe gonna touch your house. But if every street, every house, every car, every phone is made by a man.
Yeah.
Everything you use, every technology, they're very needed for everything. Everything we use and everything that needs hard work, like bridges and skyscrapers and crazy stuff, is built by a man.
Yeah.
So how can you say you don't need men? And do you really want to have, when something happens, there's a fire, do you really want 20 fire women to show up and get you rid of that? No.
Or a military with only 120-pound women protecting the country. If I didn't know any better, I'd say men are needed. That's why God put us here. But I don't know. Maybe other people know better than God. I could be wrong. Well, you mentioned the school shooters. None of them are done by like real men. They're all like nerds. There's a good friend of mine. He's a comedian named Jeff Zenisek. He's great. Look him up. And he's got this great bit. It's on his Instagram. You can find this actual clip. And I'm not going to do his whole bit. It's his, but just the brilliance of his book, illuminating what you said, or his bit. He's talking about school shootings. And he's like, we need bullies again.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's all nerds doing the school shootings. Case in point, who writes a manifesto? It's all nerds. And of course, nerd in the sense of like an incomplete, man or an incomplete boy, someone who doesn't have the outlets that a boy needs. Then, like you said, then you put them on antidepressants, which apparently close to 100% of all school shooters are on. So they're numb to their psychological state, no empathy. Not that there's any problem there.
And it's always the ugly, fat ones.
Yeah.
Or the introverted, just like you said, like if and unfortunately, sometimes we need somebody to shame us.
There's healthy shame.
There's healthy shame, even self-shame. A lot of times I'm telling myself I'm not good enough. I need to be a better man. I need to protect more. And how do you get better in the gym if you're like always telling yourself you're good enough? How does that work?
Yeah.
Like there is like a healthy balance to like being like, hey, I want to be strong. I want to be better. I'm actually not good enough.
Yeah.
I don't hate myself for not being good enough, but I can be better.
Right. Amen to that. But the idea of like, never shame yourself. You're great the way you didn't even try, but that is great. Like, cool. You're making someone weak. You're disconnecting them from their emotional response that would better them. There's an author named John Bradshaw. He's deceased at this point, but he's got many great works. And one of them is a book called Healing the Shame That Binds You. And you might think, well, of course, like he's all about get rid of shame. It's like, no, he just has a distinction between healthy shame and toxic shame. Toxic shame would be more around like, I'm just never good enough. But healthy shame, it's more like you did something. And if it wasn't right, or you knew it was wrong, or you chose not to do something because it was the easy way out, feeling shame about those actions is very healthy. Because shame, it's the work of David Hawkins suggests shame is like the lowest vibrational emotion. In other words, shame is the emotion that feels the worst. So if you feel something bad when you do bad, that's good. That's a healthy thing. Because how else are you going to learn to do it better?
Shoot up a school.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you got a dopamine hit, like I did something really bad. I feel dopamine hit. I feel good about that. Like you're not going to change it. So feeling bad when you do bad things, or you could have done better, you betrayed yourself, you didn't give your best effort, feeling bad about that is very healthy, in my opinion.
And that's where we also need body shaming, probably.
You mean if you're 300 pounds and obese, you're not just as healthy as everybody else?
The whole everybody is beautiful I mean, now I see on Instagram all these like fat people that like say it's so beautiful and amazing, and they've all died.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
that is crazy. And that might be the most obvious example of how the propaganda is detrimental. You look at people who abide by the propaganda, feel good about doing something that's literally bad for them, and they die off. That's an interesting clinical trial that we're living in.
Or that God made us that if you're too skinny or too fat, you cannot procreate
Yeah.
because you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Or if you're too old, age, obesity, or too skinny is a then you're not able to get pregnant as a woman, and same with sperm count as a man. Like if you don't exercise and if you do live a very unhealthy life, your sperm might count be low and slow, and because you're not supposed to.
Yeah, that's kind of like God and nature telling you you're actually not good enough.
Yes.
At least to procreate. And I wouldn't advise, like, yes, we should go out and shame overweight people. Or I wouldn't even advise overweight people to feel deep internal shame about themselves, but feeling the healthy shame about the actions, feeling healthy shame about the actions they don't take, eating good, exercising. I would say that would be so beneficial.
Absolutely. And sometimes I don't really know if what you see online is all real, or because I have a lot of gay friends, especially in Hollywood, that don't agree with the whole child narrative and with everything they're doing and pushing upon people, and then it just seems like sometimes online, if it's bots or if it's controlled because one voice is off. And this is where I think Rumble and X come in so strong, because then you have some sort of like freedom of speech.
Right.
And that's really interesting. And I think that's where you come in very strong. What do you think about Rumble and X?
Yeah, well, first of all, I enjoy freedom of speech. I mentioned before, I'm grateful for COVID, and I really am. Like a lot of the stuff that happened with it, the erosions of freedom, the tyranny, I would consider that a curse. But there's always a blessing within the curse, and the blessing, it woke me up to so much, and I think it woke so many other people up to so much. And one of the things I woke up to is freedom's my number one value. I didn't know that before COVID. I took freedom for granted. I felt entitled to it, ignorant, like just, oh, this is America. We're always going to be free. But then COVID happens. I'm like, oh, this is something that can go away if we allow it. And of course, the backbone of freedom is freedom of speech. And we've seen with the Twitter files being released, even the federal government, the Biden administration was directing censorship, erosion of the First Amendment. I mean, Dave Chappelle has the great quote, First Amendment is first for a reason. And the Second Amendment is just in case the first one doesn't work out. So, man, freedom of speech, it's something, if it goes, it's our fault. It's because we allowed it. And then you look at big tech, how it's been very censorship rich. It hasn't been about free speech. You can be deplatformed, have videos taken down. I'm still on those platforms, but I've had various videos taken down, demonetized, just deleted. So if it goes away, we've allowed it. But then you see people who are running Rumble, they're change makers. They're saying, well, we're not going to allow it. We're going to do our very best. Here is a YouTube alternative with the foundation of free speech. Like, this isn't a platform to propagate a narrative. This isn't a platform for you to say only what we agree with. It's a free speech platform. And I think that's beautiful. And then hearing interviews with Elon Musk, like him on Rogan, talking about, why'd you go to the trouble of buying Twitter? Like, you got a lot of stuff going on, and you also bought it for a way inflated price. And, Elon's sentiment is, I bought it to try to save society, because you can't have a free society as we know it if there's no freedom of speech. And in our culture, obviously, Twitter has become a really important town square of free speech. So you have change makers like Elon, the people running Rumble, and that's great. And then weirdos like me show up and like, well, if free speech is your value, I'm going to be on here. I'm going to support the platform because I want to say what I have to say. And I want other people to as well.
And how did you make it on the Plandemic movie? I was watching that movie and then I saw you. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
First of all, everybody that hasn't seen it, Plandemic on Rumble, I think you can find it.
I'd imagine. And also you can, the third Plandemic, the one that just came out, it's called The Great Awakening. You can go to thegreatawakening.com. It's there as well.
Yeah, must see. And you're in it.
Yeah, man. So how that came to be, I've known Mickey Willis, the maker of the Plandemic films, which are one of the most important pieces of content that's come out in the world in the past few years. The Plandemic films, there's never been a film that's more censored. They try to scrub it from the internet, yet it has so much truth in it. The truth shines through. People find ways to watch it. You have to go to this specific website. You can't watch it on YouTube, and you can't spread links. Sometimes email providers won't even let you email the link. Yet his films have been viewed over 1 billion times, which says a lot. So I had a chance to meet Mickey maybe 3 years ago, and it was just an instant brotherly connection. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but I was just blown away. This man has a huge heart. He's the best family man. He cares about the world, and he's dedicated to helping humanity. So it was just, I had so much respect for him right off the bat. And he knew who I was. He appreciated my work. And then just as we built our friendship, and, you know, he knows my values, my work, what I stand for, just he said, like, some of what you have to say, it has a great spot in the film. So it was my birthday of last year. He said, you know, can you come do an interview with me for the film? I said, I would do anything to contribute to what you're doing. So it was a great honor to be in it. And like, don't watch the film because of me. Like, the film, take me out of it. It's just as good. Maybe it would be better, but it's definitely a phenomenal film.
Did that get you in any trouble?
No, you know, I don't know how you see it, Ken, but I'd be curious. But how I see, like, the trouble, the cancel culture, I've come to realize, I believe that only functions if you consent to it. So how you consent to cancel culture, or the trouble that you could be in for associating with something that's so against the narrative, and they only talking about the things that the powers that be try to censor, how you consent to that is with fear. If you fear losing what they could take away, you're going to consent to it. You're going to maybe be stressed. You're maybe going to not do certain things. You're going to be controlled by what I'll just generally call the cancel culture movement. But if you don't fear what they could take away, then you're uncontrollable. There's no trouble to be had. There can be trouble they attempt to throw at you, but it doesn't land on you unless you consensually move into the path of it. So when I look at, you know, I've gone through big cancel culture attempts, and then, you know, being a part of films like Mickey Willis's, I look at, well, what could they take away? Potentially money, status, cool. Things that would be stressful, but they don't matter. But then also, because I function so independently of the machine, if you will, I'm not dependent on Hollywood for anything. I want no part of it. So if you're not dependent on a machine outside of yourself, there's not much they can take away. Worst case for me is big tech deplatforms me. That would be a stress. Like, it wouldn't ruin my life. I'd be fine. I'd have stressful probably 3 days. I'd be bummed. And then I'm like, well, my son, I'm taking a shit. He just said daddy again. And you know what? I'm good. So when I see like Vice News wrote a smear article on me a few months ago, and I looked at it, I was thrilled about it. I'm like, dude, thank you. Because the trouble I got in with Vice News, first off, I looked at who's writing this. Vice News. It's a very leftist media organization now. George Soros owns it. If they wrote something positive about me, that would worry me because I know who they are, what they do, what they stand for. But also not everything, but most things they were writing about me, I was like, I agree with that. It's just you're writing it as if it's a bad thing. And nope, this is a good thing for me. Like anti-vaxxer, he's with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Dr. Robert Malone at this rally. I'm like, yeah, I'm so proud of that. So it's like, you didn't write much that's too... the only thing they wrote that wasn't true, they said I'm transphobic. No, I'm like grooming children phobic, very phobic of that, but like trans people, cool. Like I don't buy into your imagination creates reality. I don't buy into that, but like, cool, you're trans, do your thing. Like, just don't expect me to base my reality off your imagination. So nonetheless, I looked at everything they wrote. And I'm like, I'm pretty good with most of that. So with that said, that's how I avoid trouble, basically by not consenting to it.
But I feel like deplatforming is like step one. Like what we saw with the Andrew Tate, the Tate brothers, First they deplatform you, then they smear you, right? Then they call every girl you ever dated and try to find somebody who falls. And sort of like allegedly you've done something, and they try what they did with Russell Brand.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they can't find anybody with Elon Musk. But that's like the next step. And the third step, as far as the Tate brothers go, is they attempt to kill you.
Yeah, luckily they haven't tried to kill me yet. So that would certainly be a different level of trouble. And it would be great if that doesn't happen to me. But I would also say if it does, like, I still wouldn't consent to it. And also as it is, I've put in certain security measures in my life, and maybe something like that would amp up measures I need to take. But that's not going to change. That's not going to intimidate me into doing what I need to do because I feel very on purpose. And you can even extrapolate and like, hey, if they're saying they're definitely going to assassinate you, cool. Like what they're taking away is your life. And yes, that definitely really matters. But also, if you believe in the afterlife, if you have faith in God, whatever someone's version of that is, and I have my version, then they're not really taking away my life. Like if you just fear death, and by the way, like they're trying to get so many people to not believe in God anymore because they're much more controllable because they believe death. If you don't have any belief in God, then this life is all there is. If they take away your life, then you have nothing. There's nothing after it. Now you're very controllable. They're evoking the fear of death. But if you don't have that ultimate fear of death, as in there's no God, this is all there is, then you're not as controllable. And like, yeah, put a gun to my head. I'm going to be under a stress response. I'll feel fear. But also I'll have a bigger picture. The mantra is a quote, which I do my best to live by and believe this is virtuous to live by. I forgot who the hell said it. It might have been one of the founding fathers. It's better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. And living on your knees, being intimidated by whatever level of trouble they'll throw at you, that's not really a way to live.
So you're saying it's better to fight for the truth and act under God than to live a coward, right?
I would dare say, yeah, living with courage.
And purpose.
Courage and purpose rather than cowardice. I would dare say that's the ingredient to a happy, fulfilled life. And, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I've been able to talk with him many times, and he has said something that it was just so profound. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., everybody already knows this, but just for perspective, I'll remind everybody, his father got in enough trouble, they killed him. His uncle got in enough trouble acting not with the powers that be, they killed him. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Probably has some crosshairs on him now. So this is a man, his father was taken from him. Yet, RFK says there are worse things than death. Living a life on your knees is one of those things. Living a life governed by tyranny is one of those things. And he says, we're this moment we're living in, this is the hill to die on. And that really struck me. It registered with me, realizing, yeah, there are worse things than death. If you think about it, living a life on your knees. That's why, like, the founding fathers of our country knew that. They risked their lives. I mean, if they didn't succeed, it was certain death. They were either going to be killed in war or they're going to be captured by the Britain and killed. They were, treasonous, according to the British government. But they knew, like, well, there's worse things than death. Living a life in a cage like we are now, this is worse than death. And I'd imagine they had some belief in God, the afterlife, that allowed them to go forward with that courage where they were willing to risk their life in the name of the freedom. And I do think freedom is the principal thing that makes life worth living.
That's beautiful. I feel the same way when and they can't kill us all. And
Yeah, there's that. And if they can, fuck them, all the power to them. They'll have to live with that on their conscience.
Yeah, and I don't know, the universe also works in mysterious ways where, when something like the pandemic happens, it works in like something else rises.
Yeah.
Some other energy, when there's evil, there's good, and when there is no God, God comes in other places, and you have people like Robert, where you're like, wow, like, I can't believe they won't give him protection.
Yeah.
Do you see this all the time?
Oh, yeah.
They won't protect him?
They're refusing Kennedy's Secret Service protection. Yes. And apparently he just requested it again. Yeah. And they still denied him. Which is, that is shameful on the Biden administration. And also Kennedy. I've been around him. He's got a great security detail, and I think he's got plenty of money where he can provide that for himself. But I'd imagine the reason why that's a big story isn't now he doesn't have security. No, he does, and he can get more, but it's just more the principlelessness, cowardness, tyrants that are currently in the White House. It shines the light on them, and that's why I think it's a big story. That's why I think he talks about it.
What about Trump getting off those ballots?
Yeah, I don't.
What is up with that?
I don't really agree with that.
So according to me doing my research and listening to Tucker Carlson, the whole reason they're doing this is because of, what was the date?
January 6th.
January 6th, which was illustrated and now proven to be wrong.
Yeah.
And I think there's enough proof now. And Tucker Carlson, he laid it out in a very long platform, which makes a lot of sense. And in my understanding now, these states are trying, which is purely like as much as against democracy as you can lay it out, because now you're taking the right from the voters and you won't even give them a chance to vote for the person they would want to choose. Because if they believe that the thing wasn't fake, then they could just not vote for him. But now you don't even have the chance to vote for somebody.
Yeah.
And now it's happening in 2 states, I think I've seen.
Yeah, I know Colorado is one. I know Gavin Newsom in California rejected it. He said that take Trump off the ballot, that's dirty politics, which surprised me. And I was maybe the one thing I've ever heard Gavin Newsom say that I agree with. But from my point of view, the political persecution of Trump has been more than obvious. The charges in New York, the charges in Georgia, the sexual harassment case. I mean, they're going after the guy because I think the guy is a threat. And there's that meme of, picture of Trump, and he says, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. I think Trump he's not controllable to whoever these shadowy globalist people are that are trying to run things. And if I had to bet, I would bet the 2020 election was rigged to a degree. And there's been so much evidence that's come out about that. The movie 2000 Mules is one place you can look for it. There's been so much evidence about that for the 2024 election, I don't think they could use the same tactics because so many of them have had light shined on them. A lot of people are going to be looking for it. So I think the political persecution of Trump is their next tactic. They're like, well, the voting systems and all the mail-in ballots, cool, COVID was great. We got mail-in ballots and we're trying to get people to not show voter ID, which how does that work? So they can't do the same stuff. So I think they're just trying to prevent him from even being in the race. And that's from my point of view, it just looks like complete corrupt political tactics that go against the very foundation of what America stands for.
Do you have any idea where it's all going to go this upcoming year?
Man, I think we're living in the most interesting movie ever created. Man, I have basically I don't have any idea. If I had to bet how things will play out, and I'm sure I'm wrong, but it's like, hey, if I have to take a guess, what do I think is going to be most likely? I would imagine whoever the Democrat running is, I'd imagine they win. It doesn't necessarily mean they win the election, but they're awarded the election win. Yeah. And I would guess that Biden is pulled out kind of last minute, probably enter Gavin Newsom, maybe Michelle Obama. But I just don't imagine, with the evidence I've seen, I don't imagine a free and fair election actually taking place. Based on the polls, if the election was held today, Trump would win. It's even in, I think there's 7 key swing states, Trump is polling better than Biden is. So it seems like Trump should win the election. And my prediction is he will get the most amount of legit votes. But I just have a hard time imagining these sick, demented people that run the system would actually allow that to happen. What they've been doing, it's already obvious. So that shows us they're not afraid of doing obvious things and then just propagating this narrative of, those election deniers, they're just crazy. You can't talk about denying election. Cut to clip of Hillary Clinton in 2016 saying the election was rigged and Russia collusion hoax. So, yeah, that's my prediction. But curious, do you have any hunch about it?
Well, I always wonder if there's a way where, as the voters can have like we can get rid of the mailing it in, and we can get voting cards where you have to show an ID. Is there no way to change the whole system, or like who gets to change that?
I'm definitely not a smart person in this realm, but I think each state decides like how their elections are run. Like if you have to show a voter ID or can you do mail-in ballots? I think that's decided at a state level. And I'm not really sure where all that stands. Like, is it looking like it's going to be pretty loosey-goosey, just mail-in ballots and just come tell us who you are, don't worry about an ID because that's racist? Or is it going to be run in some kind of secure way with various states? So I'm not sure. I mean, it certainly can be done, and ridiculous that it's not just set in stone.
I mean, for me, it's interesting because I used to always think that the president figure is some sort of like a puppet anyways.
Yeah.
So for me, it's interesting that Trump does seem to be such a obstacle and such a problem in the whole system, because I would always think then there's so like I think Joe Rogan always said like what is it really like when you like are in the White House, you know? Well, how much do you really get to decide, and how much can you really change when you're in that position.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very interesting that it seems to be like the people have power. There's some sort of power. It's very powerful, and they're working very hard to not get this group mobilized and work together. So they're trying to isolate and keep everything and like keep us busy with the gender fight and the race fight and the LGBT fight. So like as long as they can isolate us and not work together, it seems to work out for them.
Yeah.
But it seems to be like that the power is still with the people, and that they're not. It's not set in stone, and it's not like as we might think we're so helpless and like such a victim
Yeah.
thing, because they fear people like Trump or Andrew Tate, and they have to take these people off immediately because they mobilize young men, and it's dangerous. So it seems like there is a lot of power, and there's beauty in that, and it gives me hope.
Yeah, same. And I love that question you were pondering, because I always thought as well, like, oh, the president, that's kind of just a puppet. And I think Joe Biden is pretty on par with that. But it is very awakening how much they fear Trump. And I think to the degree that they fear him, which is high, is probably the degree of power that the president can have. And I'd imagine some presidents get in and they're like, okay, the system, all these people around me, all right, like, let me just go with the flow. Rather than them asserting power, they're more like, cool, I'll play along. But I guess, like on paper by law, how much power can the president have if he claims it? Trump is, I'd imagine, someone who probably claims a lot more power than a lot of other previous presidents that have just like, yeah, we'll go along with, and they probably get elected because the powers that be already know, this is a guy that's going to play ball with us.
And being rich himself, he's not as easily manipulated.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's about like lobbyists and people who have money and who want to push certain things. And if you have money yourself, that buys you a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
Like you said, like if they can't take away, like if you're set up, you can say a lot of more things. You don't have a boss upon you. You don't have to play a certain role because you're like, fuck you.
Yeah. And a couple of things that make Trump different. You mentioned he might be the richest president of personal wealth ever. If not, he's definitely up there. So obviously his personal money makes him different. But then also he's someone who's been famous in the public eye for decades. And that makes him different, because I think a lot of the politicians that get in office aren't ones we want in office, because what's driving them is a sense of they desire significance and control. But Trump's been playing that game. He's been significant for so long, and he hasn't needed the political office to be his beacon of significance. He's achieved that. Everybody around the world already knew who Trump was. So it's like he's not even tempted by the allure of, the significance and power I could get from this office. It's like, no, he already had that. So he doesn't need to play ball in order to get it.
But there's no way he can make it?
Well, I definitely think there's a way, for sure. I'm just saying I think the odds are stacked against him. He's...
but they're so afraid of him winning that they won't even let them vote for him because they know he's going to win it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like playing a basketball game and the refs are like rigging the game. They're only calling fouls against this team, and all the calls are favorable, and they like trip a player occasionally. And so I think he's definitely playing a rigged game, but that doesn't mean there's no hope. It just means, he doesn't have a fair shake, but it's not a fair fight. I think he can definitely still win. And I hope he does. I would love it if it's Trump or Kennedy. I would be grateful for either of them. Obviously, Trump on paper has a better shot. So I'd be surprised if he won, if they allow him to win, if he truly does win. Yet it's not like going to take a miracle. I think it's possible.
It will be a crazy year either way.
It will definitely be crazy.
So what was your awakening journey? Have you always been open-eyed and questioned everything, or did you have some sort of moment where things in your life changed?
Yeah, well, appreciate you asking, and it has been a journey. There's, when I started awakening, like I wasn't awake as I am now. And in 20 years from now, I'm sure I'm not awake now as I will be then. But my journey started when I was about 20 years old. I got connected to a couple powerful mentors, a guy named Paul Chek, who runs the Chek Institute, exercise, nutrition, holistic health, mind body stuff, and then another guy named John McMullen. And with those learnings, I was learning a lot about myself and doing a lot of self-growth, and then got into like all these other self-growth things, like let me read Tony Robbins and all these other things. So about the age of 20, I started realizing, the age-old wisdom that you find, which is nothing is as it seems, and you're not who you think you are. And, we have an ego, and if we can observe our ego, then we can find a little bit more about who we are. There's just space to learn like who we are and let that to come out rather than just living governed by our ego. So I think around the age of 20, I started having my psychological soil rototilled. So it wasn't just hard and crusty. It became loose and open and, being inquisitive, like, yeah, if nothing is as it seems. And even my own thoughts, there's always a story under my story. I'm never upset about what I think I'm upset about. That's been, yeah, I'm very grateful at a young age. I kind of got into that sort of mindset, and yeah, there's been various stages along the way, which, by the way, I'm kind of making myself sound like good. I'm plenty dysfunctional to this day, trust me. But yeah, and then there's been other various awakening moments for me. COVID was certainly a big catalyst, a big blip on the radar. Having my son was another huge awakening moment as well. And then some of my sort of catalyzers of growth and awakening moments were letting things go or moving. So I think it was about 2013. I'd been teaching for Paul Chek for a number of years at that point, and it was good, but I just was like, this inner compass of mine was calling me to go elsewhere. So I let go of something good and moved from San Diego to South Carolina, and that was that move, leaving something and moving. That was a big catalyst. Coming to Austin has been a big catalyst. Before comedy, I was doing health and exercise coaching. And once my content started taking off after a couple years, I let go of something good, my previous career, in order to embrace the unknown of something that could be great. Or it could fail, but got to let go of something good in order for something great to enter your life sometimes. So yeah, it's been a progressive journey for me, and I do my best to regularly nurture myself with growth. So right now I work with a personal coach in my inner life, helping me grow as a man, as a person, and that's amazing. Read books and go to Tony Robbins seminar, things like that. So for me, there's always sort of a progressive nurturing of my growth and awakening.
So you used to be a comedian, or I've recognized there's a lot of truth in comedy, and a lot of times it's almost like it looks funny, but they're speaking a lot of truth.
Right.
It's almost like a shield of protection. I always think like if Andrew Tate would call himself like a comedian, because a lot of his things are comedic to me. Like people think it's very offensive, but a lot of things are just really funny.
Yeah.
To me, it's his. There's nothing that I love more than his emergency meetings on Rumble, because it's like it's the truth, but it's also it's so dark, the truth, that it's much more, for me, it's much more easy to digest if it's in a comedic way. And I feel like about you, it's like the same way. It's like you're speaking the truth, but you're making it funny, kind of.
Well, I think you're very perceptive about comedy. And, my mission with my work is to help awaken people. It's not to make people laugh, but how I strive towards accomplishing the mission of awakening people to their own critical thinking and the guidance of their heart. I do that with laughs. And there's the number one principle in comedy is the truth principle. In order for something to be funny, there has to be truth, whether it's truth in the joke or the joke reveals a deeper truth that you didn't know was there. It breaks the psychological scar tissue of lies, hypocrisy, corruption, self-deception. The joke can break that, truth comes out, and then you get the emotional response of laughter. So in good comedy, there's always going to be truth. That's why a lot of people would say, why isn't Saturday Night Live funny anymore? Because they're pretty obedient to the narrative, not the truth principle. And I agree. I think with harsh realities, pain, difficult truths, comedy is a helpful way to convey those. You can listen to Dr. Robert Malone speak, and I think he's a brilliant guy. He's got a great heart. I know him. And you can walk away from like an hour talk with Dr. Malone saying, look, I'm pretty scared. I'm way more informed than I was. I'm more awakened, but boy, am I scared. Because he just tells it to you like it is, and we need that. But I think, we also need other instruments in the orchestra in the symphony of truth. And I think comedy is just one of the instruments. God forbid it was the only instrument where the only way to get truth and information out there was with comedy. No, like we wouldn't want that, but I think it can be helpful. And, I've had countless people come up and thank me like, JP, thank you. You helped me get through COVID. And that's because I was using comedy to convey truth in a way that's just a bit more pleasurable than listening to a scary form of the truth only.
I couldn't agree more. No joke is really funny if there wasn't a little bit of truth in it. And most jokes are also like there's nothing funnier than like a racist joke or
if it's true, if
there's
it's
some
funny.
sort of truth in it, it's racist, but it's funny. Or you do like a sexist joke or a rape joke, or like last time I was at the Mothership and I watched Kill Tony. All the jokes were like where am I allowed to laugh or not? Like you catch yourself a little bit in like being like, it's funny, but damn, like you're so conditioned to not hurt anybody's feeling and make everybody comfortable that it's like uncomfortably funny, like dark humor.
And it can be relieving because if a joke resonates with you, you might like, am I allowed to laugh?
Yeah.
But if it is, it's letting something out. Like there's a perspective, a truth that you've had inside. Maybe you've been afraid to speak it. Maybe you've even been afraid to acknowledge it because it's too taboo. But if you want to laugh, it's helping you have a release around that subject.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like they say when you can't make suicide jokes anymore, then you have to worry. Then it's serious.
Yeah.
You can't joke about it anymore, kind of.
Yeah. I think everything needs to be mocked. That's why, there's the psychological archetypes. The court jester is one of them. And we need mockery. Otherwise, we start taking ourselves too seriously. We take other people too seriously. The purpose of the court jester is to keep the king's ego in check, so that the king can continue to serve the kingdom rather than have the kingdom serve him and his own ego. And the king wears a crown to symbolize the higher purpose that he serves. And the king should be the greatest servant in the kingdom. People would think, no, it's the other way around. Everybody in the kingdom's his servant. No. The king is the servant of the higher purpose. He wears the crown to remind himself of that. And he needs the court jester to basically see the consciousness of the king that's in line with the purpose, and then the king's egotistical nature. He's a human, he's got an ego. See the king's egotistical nature, which might be around his own agenda, wanting significance for himself. And then the court jester sees that and mocks that so that the king can see it, observe it, be self-aware, keep himself in check, so he's not directing from the ego. He sees the ego because it's being mocked, so he can continue directing from his higher consciousness that's aligned with the crown that he serves. So that's why I think I'm biased. I'm a comedian, but that's why I think comedians are important in our day. Not only we're all kings and queens of our own kingdom, our families, our personal lives, but then you extrapolate, we have other king figures, you know, who's running what, like the country, like those are other kings. And so many of them are behaving like tyrants. So they need to be mocked. So they probably, like Biden, he's probably not going to be self-aware and like, oh, I'm being mocked. I can see my egotistical nature. Good luck on that. But other people can see it when he's being mocked appropriately.
How do you help somebody? Does everybody have to do their own awakening? Or is there some sort of, you can help on the journey? Or you can trigger somebody's awakening?
It's a good question.
Because a lot of people they're like on the edge.
Yeah.
And they might, once they get in touch, or like once I like got in touch or saw like Andrew Tate for the first time, it like spiked something in me where I was like, this is interesting. You know, this is the first man that it's telling me, be of use, stop being happy. You don't want to be running around with a smile all day. Like, be useful, you know, protect, provide, be a man. Life is going to be unfair. Just deal with it. Get up anyways. Nobody cares how you feel. Stop addressing your feelings every day. Stop addressing like how unhappy you are every day. It's annoying and it has no place. Your wife doesn't care. Your boss doesn't care. Nobody cares how you feel. I wouldn't be fit if I would care about how I feel every day. Like I would not work out. Like this morning, I hit the snooze button, and 5 seconds later, I'm like, "What the fuck am I doing?" Again, this devil is in my head. Is telling me you need more sleep. Just relax. Nobody cares. You know, your wife's gonna be happy. Just stay in bed. You know, you don't want to get in the cold plunge right now. And I get up. And I do it anyways, you know, and I have all these excuses, you know, my wife woke up and I had to make her like warm milk and I didn't get enough sleep. But you know what? Andrew Tate told me that nobody cares. So I don't care. I don't care how I feel. I get it done anyways. I get up and I just get it done and I don't give myself a way out. And I really needed that.
And because you abide by that, you're growing. You're doing the things even when you don't feel like doing them, and you use the notion, oh, I want to snooze. Well, nobody fucking cares. Get up and do it anyway. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And
how can you accomplish anything if you worry about how you feel? Nothing ever will be get done because you just want to be comfortable in your swim in butter.
You're making it all about you and your comfort, and while believing that comfort is good for you, where nobody's ever grown being in the coffin of their comfort zone. Nobody's ever achieved happiness being comfortable. You can be comfortable, but it's not going to make you happy. But as far as like, can you catalyze someone else's growth? 2 thoughts on that. One is the age-old wisdom that I think is true, but it's obnoxious because it's true. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. So what can we do? We can lead horses to water, which I think is a great help. And I think there's a pattern that we can adopt for people in our lives to help lead them to water. We can't make them drink it, but we can lead them to some water. We can adopt a pattern of Andrew Tate's. And I think it's boiled down what Andrew Tate does, what motivated you, what we can potentially do for other people. Stop fucking comforting people and be real with them. And I think that can at times be having uncomfortable conversations with people, giving them reflections about themselves they might not be seeing, but they need to see. And if you have the courage to do that, you got to accept the consequences. They'll either say thank you for it or fuck you for it. They might push you away, because you become a threat because you don't validate their comfort zone. But if they're a true friend, if it's actually a heartfelt connection, either immediately or soon thereafter, they'll thank you for it because they see you have their best interest. You want them to grow. You want the better thing for them. You're not just there to validate their comfort zone. I'm very fortunate to have a group of guy friends here, heartfelt connections, and we do brotherly things. I mean, we swam across the lake. We almost drowned. It was the dumbest thing, but we do hard shit together. And many times my friends have had a talk with me, telling me things I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear. And I always thank them for it because I had a tolerance to feel my feelings of discomfort that I arose when they were reflecting, hey, JP, here's how I see this in you, your life, your relationship. I didn't want to see it, but it was uncomfortable to see, but they had the courage to share with me how they saw it. Not to tell me this is true for me, but say, hey, JP, this is how I see it. What do you think? I'm like, damn it. Yeah, that's true for me. That was a blind spot of mine. I was in denial. I was maybe too scared to address it. So I think being real with people, being willing to get uncomfortable with people, and being willing to surrender this shitty form of connection, which is validating people's comfort, I think we can do that for people. And that's really a pattern that Andrew Tate displays so beautifully. And doesn't mean we have to be Andrew Tate to other people, but it means we can use that same pattern that he's using.
I have this big problem where I can't, like you said, I can't comfort people anymore.
Yeah.
I can't be this fake bitch anymore that just comforts you and is like, no, you're fine. You don't need to work out. You don't need to be healthy. Just kill yourself. Like, I can't be like that.
So you would be a good friend.
Yeah, but it's a hard role. It's like it's a difficult role to play, and I feel like, I guess, it's like the dad's role too, because the mother has the love for the child no matter what. What is the word that I'm looking for? Unconditional love. Yeah. And I always tell my wife, you're the only one that will always love my son unconditionally. But even between her and me, if I cheat on her, there's no unconditional love. It has conditions.
Right.
There's a clear condition. If I don't provide for her, if I slop off and eat shit and get fat and like lay on the couch all day, there is no she's not gonna love me no matter what. A mother to her child will love the kid, even if it's a fat criminal. You know, drug user, maybe even. A mother will love their child even if it's like a drug abuser. But if my son does drugs, there will be like consequences to that.
Yeah.
Especially like, I will not love you if you're a criminal or if you let yourself go.
Now,
like
would
that.
you, I might project onto you, so it might be wrong. I would imagine if your son started doing drugs, became a criminal, you would still love him, but you wouldn't approve of him. You wouldn't validate him.
Or comfort him.
You wouldn't comfort him. You would maybe be very stern and harsh, maybe even to the extent of being personally disconnected until this behavior goes. But I would imagine you'd still always love him. You just might not show the love in a certain way. Would that be true?
Very true. Yeah. Very true. And I feel like, and I have this problem nowadays in society. There's this, it gets pushed on upon me that I am not allowed to tell anybody, give anybody advice, because who am I to give advice? It's always this like, what do you know? Everybody needs to be free, and it's this false narrative of freedom that everybody can just be who they want to be, and you have to accept them the way they are. My mom always tells me, you need to accept your brother just the way he is. But to me, that's a naive view, because he isn't the way he is. He is conditioned on his surroundings. So he's conditioned by his parents, by our society, by school, by his friends. So he's very conditioned, and if he would have grown up somewhere else, he would have been a completely different person. So to me, there is a lack of self-awareness, and I see the big potential. And because I love you, I have to be very hard on you. But they don't want that. They want me to comfort him and just accept him the way he is. But I have this like need to, like, as a man, if you don't experience some sort of exercise, and like you said, it could be anything, could be swimming, climbing, jiu-jitsu. Not everybody needs to have big muscles and go to the gym and be a bro, but you need to tap in. You can't be a lazy bitch on the couch. You need to tap into your testosterone and into like your manhood and move. You gotta move. And if you don't move and show a lack of discipline, I will not accept that.
And it sounds like your brother, for example, is a horse that doesn't want to drink the water.
Yeah, no matter how many Andrew Tate videos, he thinks it's repulsive, and like he wonders why he's always so angry. You know, that's what, like, and not only him, like a lot of men, like I would guess if I would send them, like show them the Andrew Tate, they would be like, that's way too hardcore for them, right?
I found, as a man, I have found a couple ingredients in friendships that are not only fun, playful, but they help me grow. And the ingredients would be, first off, establishing we care about each other. Nobody's going to take advice from someone who believes they don't care about them. So establishing we care about each other, and establishing we're here to help each other grow. In other words, we're all horses here. We'll lead each other to water, and will you be man enough to drink the fucking water when I lead it to you? The group of friends I'm in, we've literally had that conversation and all agreed, yes, this is the foundation of friendship that we are consenting to. That's why when we give each other advice, reflections, here's what I see you're doing. You don't seem like you're showing up very good now, and this, they'll listen and they'll take action. And of course, not all reflections are 100% accurate. Like, as a man, you got to like do your own thinking, but you got to be man enough to have an open mind and be willing to feel uncomfortable if you're looking at something being shown to you that you don't want to see. But if it's there, will you put your face in the fucking water and drink it? So as a man, I have found creating friendships on that foundation. We care about each other. We're here to help each other grow. We'll show each other our blind spots, and we'll have the courage to take action. That's just been awesome. Because then other people outside of the peripheral friend group, of course, we can do our best, like lead the horse to water, and they may or may not drink it. And we can always do our part. But also, I think it's important that we don't drive ourselves insane, because the horse that has its own free will isn't drinking the water that it needs, that we let it to. So we have to make sure we don't beat ourselves up and get all stressed out about that too.
It's a tough road to be on.
Yeah.
And it's a because of course, like, who am I to give somebody advice? But what if I figured something beautiful out and I wanted you to try it, you know? And I think if you're confident enough in your persona, you at least give it a try. If you would come to me and you're like, hey, Candy, I found something, you have to try this out. Like, if Joe Rogan has talked about bow hunting so much, there's no way I'm gonna die without trying it out.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not for me, you know? But I tried jiu-jitsu, and I never liked this man-to-man combat. I was always a bitch growing up. That was never a spot that I wanted to be in, because I wanted to be in comfort. You know, I always wanted to be comfortable and safe, and used to be studying photography because I wanted to be behind the lens, all safe. And I never wanted this man-to-man combat until I turned 31 now. And now I crave it.
Yeah.
So I guess everybody's on their journey, and there might be a time where you are so fed up and you crave the water.
Yeah.
You can only drown for that long until you're like, man, no more of this.
Yeah, there's a great Anais Nin quote. It's something like, the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was greater than the risk of blossoming. So it's kind of what that means to me is, we want people to blossom that we care about. And sometimes they hold themselves back. And I think the age-old wisdom is, sometimes people will just need to hold themselves back until the risk of blossoming that they fear, until that risk is greater. Or I'm sorry, until the risk of remaining tight, constricted, not changing, staying in my comfort zone. Once that gets riskier, then they'll be willing to blossom. Then they'll be willing to listen to what you're saying and take action. And some people just need to remain tight in the bud on certain things until the risk to blossom is less than the risk of remaining tight in the bud.
Can you respect a man that doesn't exercise?
That's a good question. I would say I can. Yes, I can. Yet, if they have other good things going for them, but I would also say, you're not a complete man if you're not doing something physical with this three-dimensional suit. I would say you're probably missing something. Like, what's that about? But I could still potentially have respect for him in other ways.
But that's what I'm pointing at, is you don't need to comfort him in pretending that it is okay. You
Right.
don't need to be the coach and be like, hey, you must be sad, you must be depressed. No, like there might be, he might have a beautiful family, a beautiful career, a beautiful life, but I will not comfort you in saying it's okay or you're healthy.
Yeah.
I don't have to.
Like, there's no good excuse for it.
No.
Like, you're missing something, you're not living to your potential, you're maybe taking the easy way out.
And if I truly care, I would want you to be healthy and live a long life. So saying that you're beautiful anyways and that you don't need to exercise and you don't need to work out is just like you actually don't care about somebody.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
So when it comes to family and friends, I catch myself that it's hard to watch somebody not tap into their potential.
Yeah, one of my original mentors, John McMullen, who I mentioned earlier, he says it like it is. We're all control freaks. We are. Like, we all want control. It's part of our self-preservation instinct. The more control you feel, the safer you feel, which feels comfortable, which means we want to control other people around us. We want them to live a way that we think is in their best interest. And it can be tough, like literally not having control or not having influence on someone we care about. And I think that goes back to our nature, that we're control freaks, and it's okay.
So according to my son, I made the decision, in rather than waking him up and disciplining him, I show him what it's like to be disciplined.
I love that.
He will look at me and he will wonder why I get up so early.
Yeah.
Why I don't complain, why I never talk about how I feel,
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean when there's a tragedy happening that I might show emotions.
Of course.
But there's some sort of stoicism to a man,
Yeah.
Especially, I love that thing. Like, everybody always wants me to be in touch with my feminine side, but when something tragic happens, like a robbery or somebody breaks into my home or something bad happens,
I want you in touch with your masculine side.
Yeah, I don't need can't be on the ground crying it out. Like, I need to act now. So you need to be stoic and you need to be strong, but I cannot force my son to go to the gym. So I will just show him how much joy I get out of that, how much a kick. And I can see when I do push-ups and I work out and he watches that, it does it fires him up. He wants to go out there. He wants to lift something up too. I give him like a PVC pipe. He imitates you anyways. You are like his God. You are his creator. You are everything he looks up, at least till he's 15, he will really copy everything you do anyways. So why not lead by perfect example? Because I always got freaked out, like, what if my son becomes a bitch and becomes weak?
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with him being gay or not. This is just about, you can be gay and disciplined and gay and ripped. It has nothing to do with sexuality. This has only to do if you're a sloppy human, a weak, soft human, or if you're a disciplined, fulfilled, purposeful human.
Yeah.
So I thought, what do I do as a dad? Right? I've asked myself that every day. So I thought, if I can lead by example, it's so simple. But even my wife, it does a lot even to her if I am just very disciplined. It even like it's way different than if I let myself go, she will follow. But if I am very disciplined, she will follow too. So I feel like you need to take full responsibility for yourself and for everything that happens to you, and full accountability, and it's all your fault.
Amen to that. It is all our fault. That is the pinnacle of self-responsibility. And as a father, I do my best to do the same thing. And I'm glad you said that. I needed the conscious reminder, because it's like one thing to tell our sons or daughters something, to teach them, but what we show them, it's probably 100 times more effective for helping them learn. That's why I love having my son with me when I'm exercising as well. Like, I want him to feel the stability of my discipline, and I want him to just like be influenced by that rather than me telling him you should exercise. Like, I mean, to me, it just warmed my heart the first time, like I was doing burpees and he came over. I didn't even say he's got his toys there. He just came over, started doing them with me. And I was doing clapping push-ups, and he couldn't do those obviously, but he was like doing a movement to the best of his ability to imitate it. And it's like, he learned so much, like, and I'll keep showing him that example, but he didn't do that because I told him. He did that because I showed him. So I think just, as dads, men, reminding ourselves, be what we want them to learn. Like, tell them occasionally, maybe, but just freaking be it.
What if you're the horse, that muscular, epic horse, drinking the water and inspiring the other horses like that, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of leading them there and showing them the water, maybe you show them you drinking the water.
Exactly.
Right?
They're like,
why is
that
this horse so
good-looking
happy?
horse over there? What's he doing? And I think that's probably very wise.
Because I've always looked at people, you know, when I met Tim Kennedy, I was like, hey, like I like this.
Yeah.
You know, you're not only doing this career thing like most people in LA, you're not only doing this money thing, you're doing like more than that. There's something more. You're doing this fitness stuff, but there's also like a lot of fit people that are unhealthy people. So like there's more to it. And I was like, wow, like when you are only focused on your career, like you kind of like lose your family. And if you are only a family man, you kind of lose your physical appearance. And if you're only doing physical appearance, you don't make any money. And so like you have to really shift your priorities and your time. And really, I think it's a constant battle, what you're going to prioritize, right? Because the older you get, the less physical you can be. So you need to always really organize, and then the kids get older, and then maybe you lose that part, and then you gotta really shift all the time.
Yeah.
Because at all stages of life, you might need something else.
Yeah. But having that, to me, the real man, we've got that 360-degree sphere where we know there's all those parts, the career, the family, the fitness, all the things, and realizing, like you said, that can move as time goes on.
Maybe faith, God.
I would love that in there. But just making sure we've got all those in our lives is important, because it can be easy to be a specialist, like just get good at one thing, but then like, there's no spokes in the other parts of the wheel. But as you brought up Tim Kennedy, he is a very inspiring example of a very complete wheel, by the way, and he serves his country, puts his life on the line for it. Like, I've learned a lot from that dude, and I probably need to learn a lot more from him too.
He always says, you are what you surround yourself with. And that really stuck with me.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. I mean, we just absorb things, don't we? We can think we're tough and immortal, impenetrable, but we are so influenced by our environment. And that old saying, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Like, try not to, but you probably will. So who and what you surround yourself with, I know for me, it's very important. And I don't know, maybe if I was stronger, I'd be able to be in shittier environments and not be influenced. But I don't know. I think it's part of the human condition. We absorb oxygen, we absorb energy, we absorb influence, probably guarded and like have healthy boundaries and discernment so we don't absorb a whole lot of negative influence like propaganda, but we are absorbing influence, like it or not. I remember I might have been like 17 years old, maybe 18. I grew up in Ohio, and there was a big football rivalry between Ohio State and Michigan. Biggest game of the year. And so I went with a friend he was a Michigan fan. I was an Ohio State fan. We went to the game in Michigan. Stadium has like 110,000 people, majority Michigan fans because it's a home game for them. And Ohio State ended up losing. And it was like a dramatic game, like Michigan won at the last minute. I think it was Tom Brady's senior year or something like that. And then like all these fans stormed the field, just 110,000 Michigan fans, elated. I started cheering for Michigan. And I was in Ohio. I was just so influenced by all this energy. And after I left the game, like, I'm an Ohio State fan again, but I just found it weird. Like, dude, I was totally on board cheering for Michigan, just the infectiousness of the energy. And obviously that's a dramatic example, but it's still an example to help me remember how, as a mortal human being, how influenceable I am. And I think that's one of the reasons why we want to have a lot of discernment around what our influences are. Entertainment, humans, friends, social connections, because it makes an impact on us.
Yeah, we're more tribal. Like you said, we can never get that out of us,
Yeah.
the nature. And we're tribal and we want to be part of a tribe. We're not loners. And we always want to be part of something. And I guess that's the beauty of the internet, is like, even if you're growing up in a small town in Austria, I never felt not some sort of connection, because like I always felt like there's other people different minded out there, and you can always find your niche, right? And it's different than when you don't have that and you might be in a small town where everybody thinks the same.
Yeah.
There's a lot of beauty with the internet that like people always make it seem so dark and only bad, but yeah, it really can get you through things, and it can provide your spirit, and it can get you like amped up.
Man, I agree. I've said many times, I think the greatest blessing of the internet is connection. You connect with people, and it's not like you're sitting on the couch with them, like real human connection, but it's definitely a degree of connection. And I look at the closest friends I have in my life now in person here in Austin. I wouldn't have those friends if it wasn't the internet. That's where we made the original connections, finding out about each other. And then like Jordan Peterson, I've learned so much, like Joe Rogan, like I've never met him in person. It's just all the internet. So I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think there's always blessings within the curse. And there's curses to the internet for sure. There's a shadow side, yin and yang. But that connection, finding the positive influence, the internet we're living in a special time where the internet makes that easier than ever, probably. I don't know, maybe it'd be easier if we were in like 100-person tribe and they were all like real men. It's like, no, look, these are the guys we want to be like. I don't know. But for our Western society, it's pretty good in that respect.
And that's why Axe and Rumble, again, it's such a beauty, because then if you have some sort of dialogue and you have people from all sides, you can learn and you can catch yourself and you can be like, I got the booster, but changed my mind. And, you know, maybe I ran around in a pink Speedo and maybe I changed my mind. And people get really angry about that. But like, I think it's never too late to wake up, and it's never too late to find out what kind of man you are or a woman, and to be okay with being feminine or masculine. It's never too late, really. And it's funny to me that people get so irritated about me being against the gay ABCs, you know, because like I know it more than anyone, you know, like I've been around it, and I if you're part of the trap, I mean, you know, if you were holding a Black Lives Matter sign up and got the booster, and like, it's I know what it's like to live in this delusion.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's also a big problem these days, is the being held accountable. It would be beautiful if the media would say, you know, we fucked up.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have made the whole masks and all that. Some sort of like apology. Then you can like move forward and you can establish trust again. But if there's never this moment of like seeing things for what they are, there can be no progress. So I feel like for a lot of people, I feel like that's like the hardest part, because they know it's a lie, but it's just so hard to be holding yourself accountable for things. But there's beauty in that. And there's also, once you're responsible and once you hold yourself accountable, it empowers you, because everything bad is my fault. That I jabbed myself is my fault, not the government's fault. But then I can also move forward and be like, no more from now on. I am in control. I will choose for myself what's right and what I believe and what I'm going to question.
Amen. I think we have way more power than we think we do. We're conditioned to outsource our power, which means we're not claiming the power that we have, that we've had all along. We just don't think we have it. You're like, the media, they're corrupt, but they're not going to help themselves accountable, and nobody else is going to do it for us. So guess what? We hold the media accountable. We, with our trust, our lack of viewership, that power is in our hands. We're not outsourcing our power anymore, outsourcing our power of validation to getting views or other people's approval. We're not outsourcing it. We outsource our power, or we inner source our power to the more on purpose I am, the more self-responsibility I have, the more of my power I claim and exercise. So I think the way I look at the state of the world, as it's obviously like weirdly shifting in the past few years, I think we're living in a time where we're watching the old paradigm crumble. And the old paradigm has been built on getting people to outsource their power. And the new paradigm that's emerging, it's not the Great Reset. I think it's the Great Awakening, where we're awakening to our power. And I've said many times, I think the greatest superpower of the individual is our self-responsibility. That's why, have you read Jocko Willink's book?
No.
Discipline Equals Freedom. You live it, so you don't need to read it, but you would also love it because it'd probably affirm a lot of what you say. But the self-responsibility of whatever happens, it's my fault. Like, that's why I said, if freedom of speech were to be lost in our country, it's our fault. It's not the tyrants taking away. It's our fault for letting it be taken away. Or if something happens to me, instead of being a victim and like, look at what they did to me, like, look at what I allowed to happen to myself. Where didn't I have boundaries where I let that energy into my life? Where didn't I speak my truth? Where did I go wrong as a leader of our own lives? We can ask ourselves those questions if we embrace the superpower of self-responsibility. So I think we're leaving the old paradigm of outsourcing our power, other people responsible for me. And now it's embracing the new paradigm of self-responsibility, where humans are claiming their own sovereignty and their own personal power. And the system doesn't like that, by the way. That's why that fucking thing's crumbling.
What's next for JP?
Yeah, a lot of finding myself, I think. And then career-wise, man, I've been so blessed. You know, I'm making comedy videos, releasing multiple ones every week. I've got a commentary reaction channel as well. I'm touring the country doing stand-up comedy, usually 2 weekends a month. So as far as what's next, that'll continue. And I'm sure life is going to feed me some surprises along the way. So aside from those things, I'll also look forward to finding out what's next.
Nice. And yeah, let people know where they can find you.
Best place to find me is in Candy Ken's studio. I'll be here for the next 2 minutes. But yeah, my website, AwakenWithJP.com. That's a hub. It's got all the links to all the other media and on social media. All my handles are AwakenWithJP, but AwakenWithJP is prime stuff with everything I do.
Amazing. Man, it was a pleasure to meet you.
Well, dude, such a pleasure. Man, I thank you for inviting me onto your show. I realize you do big things, and so it's an honor to be here and getting to be in your vibe for a couple hours and learn about you, how you are. You're an incredible dude, and look forward to spending more time with you.
Awesome. Yeah, if you have any questions for me, let me know. And man, I'm gonna roll it out with this thing that Tristan Tate said, which is very much comedy for me. He said there's nothing gayer. It's even gayer than having sex with a man is when you masturbate and you're getting jacked off by a man watching a man have sex. He said that might be even gayer than having sex with a man.
It's pretty gay.
It's when you're getting jerked off by a man watching a man have sex.
Wow. Yeah. Wise words.
If you don't see the comedy in that, I don't know what to tell you.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you for that wisdom, Candy Ken.